What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today, right here behind me, we have my father's 2012 Silverado 1500. You guys have seen this on the channel in the past. We got him a Diablo tuner, some headlights, a leveling kit, and a few other cool things that we've installed on this truck. Well, lately he's been mentioning that the clear coat on his wheels has started to peel and it's really starting to bother him. So today we're going to pull the wheels off, get them cleaned up, see what we can do with them, and then spray them black. So let's get through the intro and jump right into today's video. So now that we've gotten through the intro, let's take a closer look at what we're working with today. So these are the factory option 18-inch Z71 package wheels, and it's a pretty good looking wheel, but we've been curious for quite some time what they would look like sprayed black. And as you can see, just like a lot of trucks from 2012, the oxidation has gotten pretty out of control all around the lip and some other spots on the wheel. So we think it's a good time to clean them up and get them sprayed black. We are going to try to leave this center chrome ring as well as the Chevy emblem and see how we make out, and if we like it, worst case, we can always respray the cap. So let's go ahead, get these things cleaned up, get them off, and get to work. All right, we've got the wheel up at a good working height. We're going to be using a strong degreaser, some water, and a couple brushes here, and just try to get this thing as clean as we can. Get any oils and greases off so that we don't work them in when we start getting this thing prepped for paint. So we're going to hit it with that, then we'll work them, and then we'll have to clean them again before we spray them. We hit the wheel with its first clean. Now we've got it in the garage. I'm going to go ahead and blow any moisture off, any paint chips that we can, any clear and stuff, and then we'll get ready to start working with this thing. Now we're going to mark where the wheel weight is, right there with some tire chalk. In our case, it's easy. It's pretty much lined up with the valve stem because we're not going to break these wheels down or anything. We're going to paint them with the tire still on. So I'm just going to pop the wheel weight right off out of our way. Just like so. Set this to the side so we don't lose it. Now we can grab some tools and start getting this thing prepped. So now that we've got the wheel to a good starting point, I grabbed the die grinder and some of these whiz wheels. We're going to try using those to knock down these bad oxidized areas. If we have to, we can grab the palm sander with some rougher grit sandpaper. But I think these little whiz wheels are going to be just what we need on this aluminum wheel to get everything smoothed out and looking good. I'm not really going to be worried about or focusing on the good areas. We'll hit those with Scotch-Brite later just to scuff them up so that they'll take primer and paint. For now, we're just going to worry about the really bad oxidized areas that look horrible. So let's try to get those smoothed out so we can get this thing one step closer to paint. On the first wheel, I tried a bunch of different tools to see what was going to work out best for us, and what I found out was the die grinder was not really effective at working the face of the wheel. I mainly ended up using that to fix any curb rash or major blemishes. What I ended up doing was using a drill with a wire wheel and going around and getting any loose clear coat off, and then switching over to our electric DA with 100 grit sandpaper. I would go around and hit all of those same spots again. Once I hit all those spots with 100 grit, I would switch over to 400 grit paper and go around, hit all of those spots one more time, and then use the DA in anywhere that I could reach that was a glossy surface, just to scuff it up so that the paint had something nice to stick to. Anywhere that I couldn't get the DA, I was using Scotch-Brite pad by hand, but I later found out that my oscillation tool with some 400 grit paper on that worked phenomenal for getting in all of the tight, hard to reach areas, and it worked out really good and gave the paint something really nice and clean to stick to. As you guys seen in the time lapse, we did end up switching over to the electric DA, and it worked out really good. I did 100 grit to knock everything down, and then I ended up switching to 400 grit, and it was definitely the move. Worked so much better than the little whiz wheels. I thought they'd work good, but they didn't make it very even. But using that, everything's nice and smooth now, like super smooth, so I'm really happy with it. All the shiny painted areas we ended up hitting with that Scotch-Brite pad, and it worked out really good. So now that we've got that all taken care of, before we do a final clean on this thing, I'm going to use some masking paper that we have. Bought that for the trailer build project, and we're going to go ahead and get the tire masked off. Not a huge deal, it's only rubber, it doesn't really matter if it gets paint on it, but I'm going to mask it off nonetheless. So we're gonna run around this thing with some tape and paper, get this thing all masked off, and then we can finally get ready to start spraying this thing with some primer. To mask off the wheel, I came through and laid down a layer of tape so that we had something to put our paper to. Then I came through, cut a circular shape into the paper, and taped that to the existing tape. Makes it a lot easier to follow the shape around the wheel and get a nice clean fit. As you guys just seen, we got this wheel all masked up and it is ready to go. We taped off the hubcap. Everything's going to be gloss black except for the Chevy emblem. Really happy with the surface finish that we're working with. That little DA did perfect with the 400 grit. Got all the little imperfections out, as well as some little curb rash that I fixed with the little whiz wheels. So now this one is pretty much ready to be painted. We're actually going to be moving it over to that carport so that we can paint in there and keep working on the next wheel over here and not get any dust and stuff like that into our new paint. So really happy with how this turned out. Let's get it moved over there so we can do a final degrease, hit it with a tack rag, and then shoot it with some primer. Now that we've got the wheel to an area that we're going to be painting in, I want to go over some of the materials that we're going to be using today. So to start off with, we have a wax and grease remover. This is going to help us to prep our surface so that we don't have any fingerprints or other foreign grease or oils, so that our primer has a nice clean metal to bond with. From there, we're going to move on to spraying it with some primer. We decided to go with Rust-Oleum's Automotive Self-Etching Primer. This is designed to bond to aluminum and other metals. I think it's going to work out just fine for us. From there, we're going to move on to our base coat, which we decided to go with the Rust-Oleum Gloss Black Wheel Paint. This stuff is going to look really nice, and it's a little bit stronger than your regular spray paint as far as being fade and rock chip resistant. From there, we're also going to hit it with the Rust-Oleum Wheel Gloss Clear, just to give it that nice deep gloss look and hopefully protect it for many years to come. So now that we've gone over the materials that we're going to be using today, let's go ahead and get this thing a final clean and start spraying it. So we've got a nice lint-free rag here. We went ahead and put some wax and grease remover, and we're just going to go through and wipe down the whole surface, get it nice and clean as we can. You want to make sure you get any little cracks and crevices especially well, because those are likely the spots that got missed when you were doing your first clean. While we wait for the primer, we're going to go ahead, pull the other wheel off, get it cleaned up, and start prepping that one. Alright, so we've got the next wheel all cleaned up and on the table to start prepping this one now. I'm gonna go through and do the same thing. This one's pretty rough as well, so we're gonna use the wire wheel to start, go around, get this stuff roughed in, then we'll grab the DA, sand it down, and then do the hand scuff with Scotch-Brite. So let's get this one done. So we let the primer dry for about 30 minutes, and if you guys wanted to, this is the point where you could come in and wet sand this with 400 grit if you were trying to make a show car finish. For us, this is going to be perfectly fine. It's going on a daily driver truck that gets driven year round. He looked at it, I looked at it, I think it looks good, so we're just going to go ahead and jump right into our base coat. So we grabbed a can of our Rust-Oleum Wheel Gloss Black, and we're going to get this thing sprayed. I finished up prepping the surface on this wheel, taped it up. Now we've just got to throw some paper on it, bring it over, and start painting it. We ended up doing 2 coats of the gloss black. Now we're gonna go ahead and hit it with a light coat and then a heavier coat of the wheel gloss clear. The second wheel is prepped and ready, so let's go ahead and hit it with some primer. We let the primer sit for about 30 minutes, and now we're ready to hit it with some color. Damn, these things are looking really good. Like I said before, we're not going for a show car finish here. If we were, there's a bunch of stuff we do differently. But for what we're doing, it's coming out really nice, and I can't wait to see what the truck's gonna look like. But before we can do that, we've still got 2 more wheels to do. So let's get those in here so we can get to work. We've got our last wheel up here ready to be cleaned. This one looks to be the worst one, if not close to it. It's pretty rough, but we'll get this one cleaned up and then we can start sanding it. We are finally on to our last wheel. This one looks pretty rough, but I'm sure we'll get it cleaned up. So we're gonna go ahead and go through the same process. We'll get the wheel weight off and then start sanding this thing. After doing this for a little while, I noticed that if I cut up some 400 grit and put it on my little oscillator tool, it works really good for getting in the tight areas, and it saved me a lot of time doing handwork. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish this one up and we'll be ready to spray it. We got the last 2 wheels prepped and ready to go. I'm finally ready to shoot some primer so we can move on to color. We let the primer sit for about 30 minutes, and now we're ready to hit it with some color. So as you guys seen, we got all 4 wheels painted and ready to go on the truck. Now I can tell you they all look great and they're ready to go, but I always show you guys when I screw up. So I'm gonna show you a few things so that if you're doing this at home, you can improve upon. So let's take a closer look at these wheels. As you can see, the second 2 that we did came out a lot glossier. And I think that's mainly just because on the first one I got a run and then I was afraid to overspray it or spray too heavy. So on the second 2, I did them together and I just kept spraying. I did get 1 run, but they do look a million times better than the first 2. They're just way deeper gloss. So we're gonna put 2 on one side of the truck, 2 on the other side. You'll never see them at the same time and it's gonna look just fine. And then as far as the center caps go, we did have some issues with them. As you guys can see, there's a part of them that is plastic, and then there's like a chrome or aluminum like overlay over it. Well, the plastic parts, the factory must use a different type of paint, or something about it is different, because when you sand these down and paint them, or just scuff them down and paint them, it starts to lift in those plastic areas. So we ended up having to sand all the original paint off of them, and then we were able to spray it and it stuck. I'll show you guys a couple pictures of what it looked like when it lifted, and then afterwards when we sanded the paint off, the new paint took to it perfectly fine. So I wanted to show you guys that, so that if you're doing these at home, you can make them come out the best you possibly can. So now that we've gone through that, let's go ahead, throw them on the truck and see what it looks like. Yeah, this thing looks so much better. This thing looks good. I like it, guys. Really like it. We still got to put the center caps on, but let's get this thing on the ground. So we've got all 4 wheels on the truck, and I decided to throw the center caps on, and this thing looks so much better. Of course, now it's raining, but I'm super happy with how they came out, and they really weren't that bad to do. It was more time consuming than anything. Once I figured out that the oscillation tool worked really well with the 400 grit paper, that saved me a ton of time in sanding. Hopefully you guys can learn from my mistakes and avoid any of the peeling paint and get that nice glossy finish to make yours come out that much better. But as always, I appreciate you guys for checking out the channel. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, and check us out on all of our other social media platforms, Facebook, TikTok, and Bought to Build Official on Instagram. And we will catch you on the next one.